Hi everyone. Let's take a look at a stunning endgame study composed in 1975 by Mario Matous. I first saw this study as Grandmaster Simon Williams presented it on stream. So the directions are white to move and win. And if you'd like to give it a try, let me warn you, it's extremely difficult. In fact, if you're able to solve it without moving any of the pieces and all the way to the end, analyzing every possibility, then I would assume you're a grandmaster. Okay, if you haven't solved it on your own yet, let's talk through it together and I'll give you some hints along the way. All right, so it's white to move and win, but let's take a look at what black's threats are. So black is threatening our bishop, and that would be picked up with check. He has another check here on c6 we want to worry about. Potentially he has a check on e6. That would force a trade of queens, but that wouldn't work out well for black because our next move would be to take the pawn on h7, and then the pawn would promote on the next move. So black really doesn't want to move there, but he does have these other checks to worry about. All right, so we have to act quickly and we need a forcing move here. So do we have any checks? Well, bishop here is covered. The queen would take it. Can't really check with the queen from b4. That square is covered. We could push this pawn forward. That turns out not to be the solution. The king merely goes onto this nice safe square on g8. There's no way to make more progress to get at that black king. That's not the key move. Are there any other forcing moves? Well, we don't really have time to take either of these pawns because we'll drop the bishop with check in either case. So we haven't found the key move yet. Let me give you a hint if you haven't thought of it yourself. So the key move is going to be something to address black's threatening checks here. So pause the video and try to find that. Okay, the first move of the study is queen to c8. So it protects the bishop. It also protects the c6 square so black doesn't have those checks. And queen to c8 comes with a devastating threat. Well, we're attacking the knight, but that's incidental. The real threat here is bishop to e7 check. Then the black queen would be pinned, so it could not take the bishop. That would force the king back, and then queen takes queen would be mate. So that is white's threat. So what are black's possible responses here? What are his defenses? Well, queen to e6 check we talked about before. That doesn't work. We simply trade queens and we take the pawn on h7, and that pawn is going to promote, so that's not a defense. Perhaps knight c7 to defend the queen here, but that doesn't work either. There's bishop to e7 check still, forcing the king back, and we have another threat besides taking the queen. You may have noticed we've got g takes f7 check that forks the king and the queen, and that's an easy win. Something like that. So knight to c7 doesn't work. So let's see, can you come up with black's most stubborn defense here? What should he do in this position? Okay, it turns out in order to survive the longest, black should move his king to g8 to sidestep this check. So now if the bishop goes to e7, it's not check anymore, and black can just pick up our queen. So our bishop is now pinned. So what do we do about this? Well, now we need a very brilliant move in this position, and it's surprising and it's difficult to find. With those hints, pause and see what you come up with. Okay, the key move to this whole study, the brilliant move, is right here, bishop to c7. Looks suicidal. We put our bishop right where it can be taken by the knight, but more importantly, we just left our queen to be captured. So what's the point of this move, bishop to c7? Well, it actually forces black to capture our queen because we're threatening his queen. We're threatening a checkmate right here. There really is no way for black to play other than to take our queen. For example, if he tries knight takes c7, taking the bishop, which does protect his queen, don't forget we have this move g takes f7 check, forking the king and the queen, something like this. And then this endgame is easily winning for white. So knight takes c7 doesn't work. Maybe king f8 to protect the black queen. So we're just going through some possibilities before we consider the main move, which was taking our queen. King f8 doesn't work because g7 check just forces the king right back, and then it gets mated. All right, what about queen to f8, going to the protection of his king that way? Well, then there's g takes f7 check again, and the king has to go to the corner, and it gets mated. So as I said, there really is no option here. We're forcing black to take our queen. Why would we want black to do that? Well, because of this follow-up. Try to find white's next move. Okay, the correct move here is g takes f7 check, giving black two legal moves. If black moves to f8, do you see what white does? Yes, there's an immediate checkmate in one. So that forces the king over to the h8 square, right in the corner. And so that suggests what our next move should be. In order for white to even have the hope of surviving in this position, even a few more moves, what does white have to do here? You got it. He's forced to put the bishop on the long diagonal pointed at the black king. There's no other option here. But that is an extremely powerful move. White is going to fight on in this position with just a bishop against black's queen and knight. That's a powerful move because it threatens to move the king away with a discovered checkmate. If this king moves somewhere, that's a discovered checkmate. So how does black defend against that? He doesn't have time to call check. For example, if he just checks our king, queen to c6 check, then we have king to e7 with that discovered check. And yes, black can block it for a move, but then he gets mated. So he doesn't really have time to call check. So what does he do? Well, maybe he tries queen f8 so that if we get this discovered check, he can block it and giving up his queen for the bishop. But that doesn't work because we don't take the queen, we queen our pawn. And since his queen is pinned, that is a checkmate. So that idea doesn't work. What else can he do? Well, maybe you're thinking he gets some escape square here, some luft for his king, so he doesn't get mated. Well, that doesn't work because king to g6 is an immediate mate, covering that square. And so black is checkmated. So what is black's best defense? Well, what do you do if your opponent is threatening a discovered check? Well, sometimes the defense is to attack the piece that would deliver the check, so that if you get that discovered check, you just take the checking piece. So how does black attack our bishop? There's only one safe way to do it. Queen to c5. That's the only square he can attack it from without dropping his queen. Okay, so what do we do here? Now we cannot move our king out of the way. For example, if we try king f5 with that discovered check idea, he merely takes our bishop. And then if we take back, which we're forced to do, he has time to stop us from queening, like this. So what do we do in this position after black attacks our bishop? Well, we don't move the king yet. What we're going to try to do is maintain the bishop on the long diagonal, keeping this threat of discovered check alive. So we're going to move the bishop. If we move it off of that long diagonal to one of these squares on that diagonal, then we're in a lot of trouble. We just gave up our only threat in the position. We're going to lose quickly. So we're going to have to keep it on the diagonal, and the only safe squares are B2 and A1. Amazingly, one of those moves is a win and the other one loses. Try to discover which one is correct. Go ahead and pause the video. Okay, we will look at the incorrect move first. The incorrect move is bishop to a1. That is a blunder. That gives away the win. Why? That maintains the attack on the king here. What does black do about it? Well, you may wonder, can he attack our bishop again? Maybe something like this, just like he did before, trying to attack the bishop that is about to deliver the discovered checkmate. Well, if he does that, we can call check here, and he's forced to take the bishop. But don't forget, we have another threat in the position. We can queen the pawn and win. So that doesn't work. He can't continue to attack our bishop because of that queening possibility. So what does he do? What is the defense here? What is black's defensive move? Well, if he can't attack our bishop, which is about to deliver the discovered checkmate, then he has to stop our king from moving to deliver that discovered checkmate. The only way to do it, the only possible defense, and it's a winning defense in this case, is knight to c7, taking away that escape square. Now let's look at all the squares the white king can go to. That's covered, that's covered, that's covered, that one, that one. The pawn has that one covered, the king has that one covered. The white king cannot move. The pawn doesn't want to move either. It's just going to get snapped off the board. So that leaves the bishop, and the only safe square to move it to is b2. Okay, so what does black do here? Well, black wants to maintain the positioning of these three pieces to keep the white king fixed so that he doesn't deliver a discovered check or checkmate. So he's going to push his a pawn, but it turns out that's a winning strategy. Let's see, a4, bishop a1. So white can only toggle back and forth between these two safe squares for his bishop, a3, and now if he brings it back to b2, it will be taken, and white will lose. He'll have to push the pawn next, and black will take it. Maybe bishop e5, keeping it under the protection of his king, but then black takes it anyway and stops the white pawn from queening, and he will queen his own pawn shortly. So that is why bishop to a1 in this position loses, because of that move knight to c7, and then that black pawn pushes. So what is the winning move? Well, it's the only other move in the position. It's bishop to b2. So what's the difference? The difference is a matter of a tempo. Okay, so let's see. After bishop b2, black's only defense again is knight to c7 to take away that square so our king cannot move anywhere. So we cannot deliver our discovered checkmate. Then we need to move our bishop, and the only safe square to move it to is on a1. So now we put it on a1 after the knight has moved to c7. So we've lost a tempo by moving it first to b2. How does that change the game? Well, let's see. Remember, in this position, black doesn't want to budge with any of these pieces and let the white king move. He'll have to push the a pawn. For example, let's just try a few moves here. You can try all of them on your own. Let's see what happens if black moves knight to d5 check. Well, then we can move our king to the square that the knight just unprotected and call check with our bishop. And maybe black blocks it with the knight, protected by the queen. No, we just take it, called check, force the queen to take back, and don't forget, we've got that pawn ready to queen. That's mate. So knight d5 doesn't work. Can't do that. What about queen a3? Well, we saw this before. We can move the king to the square that the queen is no longer defending, forcing queen takes bishop, but then the pawn promotes. That doesn't work. Finally, what about queen f8? We saw something like this before as well. We can move the king with check, forcing the black queen to block, and then we can promote the pawn. We can promote it to even a rook if we want to, and that is a mate. So you can convince yourself in this position after bishop a1, after white lost that crucial tempo, that black doesn't want to move any of these pieces. He's forced to push his a pawn, a4, bishop b2, a3, bishop a1, a2, Do you remember last time we couldn't move the bishop to b2 because the pawn was there ready to take it? Well, now the pawn is here. We gave black an extra tempo. So we move it to b2. And again, black can't move anything but his pawn on the a file. He moves it, he queens, we take it, and black is in zugzwang. Isn't that amazing? Black is the one with all the material, all the possibilities on the board, and black is the one in zugzwang. So his position is going to self-deteriorate. For example, knight b5, king e6 check, knight c3, takes, queen. Or, for example, queen c3 check. I thought that was kind of an interesting little try, giving up the queen. If we take it, he can fork the king and the bishop, but we don't care. We have a pawn ready to queen. So there really is nothing black can do in this position. He's in zugzwang and white wins. So amazing endgame study. I hope you solved it or part of it or came up with some of the ideas. If not, I hope you had a lot of fun watching it unfold. Thanks for watching.